Welcome to Gracefully Grading. I am your host, Attorney Henry Gornbein. Today on Gracefully Grading, I am pleased to welcome as my guest Eva Kirkman, who will be leading us in a discussion of legacy gifting after age 65. I guess I qualify for many, many years. So, Eva, welcome to Gracefully Grading.
Thanks so much, Henry. I'm happy to be here with you today and all of your listeners, talking about a topic that is a passion of mine and just really exciting, I think, to look ahead and talk about in life.
Well, this is something that I look forward to learning all about, and so are our viewers. So first of all, Eva, why don't you tell us a little about who you are and your background?
Sure. Thanks so much. I've been a fundraiser for a little bit over 10 years now for nonprofits. I got my start in nonprofit fundraising in New York City, where I went to school, and just had such a wonderful experience in college partnering with organizations on events as well as peer-to-peer fundraising, and just really found my passion for this space. Now, I'm back in Michigan, my home state, and I work as a nonprofit consultant for a nonprofit consulting firm called CCS Fundraising. We focus on partnering with nonprofits to create transformational change. And what this can look like is a lot of different things in client work, whether that's supporting campaign fundraising, helping design campaigns, feasibility studies, all sorts of things. So it's a really exciting role in that I get to work with many different nonprofits and organizations, come to learn and love their missions, and meet many generous supporters in many different states. So while my role is usually advising the nonprofits, it's always a pleasure to get that donor-facing opportunity. And so I'm excited today to speak to your audience, Henry, because I think that it's a wonderful opportunity to share and empower those over 65 or looking ahead to retirement and gift planning to think about those choices and how they can navigate this time.
Eva, why does charitable giving become especially powerful for someone after the age of 65?
Great question. So I think over 65 is really, or even over 55, as you're approaching retirement, you often start thinking about a few different things, whether, your life experience begins clarifying your values, your financial picture is more stable and clear as you approach retirement, perhaps. Your desire to give back might become more personal and meaningful. And at this time, you often begin to update your estate plan or start your estate plan and think about the future of your family and those institutions that might matter to you. So you're really providing an opportunity to discuss leaving generous gifts in future potential future legacy gifts to those organizations that matter through your estate plan.
Eva, tell us about the importance of your life perspective, and let's define that and explain that for our viewers.
Absolutely. So I think the life perspective at 65, you really have an opportunity to see what lasts in life and what matters to you, where you've been able to make the most impact, whether that's through your own career, through nonprofit organizations you've been a part of, which runs a large range, right? That can be schools, hospitals, religious institutions, and then some of those nonprofits that we think of every day, like food banks or zoos, things like that. So you really start to see what matters to you, where you can have the impact. And often we see that giving becomes less transactional and more values driven at this time. So it's just a really great opportunity to think about your own life perspective and what values you want to pass on to future legacy look like.
What is the legacy mindset?
Right. I think that's a great question. And this is definitely something that all of your listeners can ask themselves. And as they begin to reflect, let's say someone wants to think about, how can I leave a gift that will leave a legacy? What will transform the future, the world, leaving the world a better place, for example? To think and reflect and ask yourself, what will outlive me? as you're writing your will and thinking about the future, what will outlive me, what will outlast me, and what will make a change that I want to see beyond my years. So I think this is a great opportunity to align your personal philanthropy, listeners, your personal philanthropy with whether your community, education values you have, health values, arts, faith communities, and really identifying those values, identifying organizations whose work matches those personal values. And if you haven't been super involved in charitable giving, this is a great time at this age to start thinking about that and perhaps getting involved. And on a small side tangent, Henry, if someone is listening and thinking, how do I get started finding a nonprofit or organization I love and support? A great way to get started is often by volunteering or going to events that they might offer in your community. So that's just a nice way to try and figure out what matters to you if you haven't already had the opportunity to do that in life.
What about family and modeling generosity? Explain those terms and how does that fit into what we're discussing?
Absolutely. So I think, and perhaps you can attest to this from your own role in the law space, but really thinking about when you're writing your estate plan, often you are talking with your family about what you're writing, and if you're not, that's okay too. But I think it's really important, and it's an opportunity to model generosity for your family, to create shared traditions with your family. So shared philanthropic traditions, whether that means supporting the same organization, understanding that a project at a nonprofit you love will take 10 years to complete, and then your future family will be invested in that project or in the space that gets built from that, for example. So, teaching your children and grandchildren and your family what generosity looks like in action. And I would also just add, we know that the great wealth transfer is coming, and there's going to be a large transition of assets from the baby boomer generation. And that is expected to be well into the high trillions of wealth being transferred down to younger generations by 2045 to 2048. So this is a great time to think about ensuring your family is on the same page as you, that you make your future legacy known to them, what you hope that they will continue to do, and an opportunity to invite them into the process so you can all as a family commit and be excited about giving to causes that you're all supportive of.
Eva, what does legacy giving really mean?
So I think this is really about intentional planning. Right now you might think, oh, there's a gala and you're going to buy a one-time ticket to that event. That's wonderful. And that absolutely supports these organizations that we all love and know in our communities. But really, it's that intentional planning, thinking ahead, thinking about, leaving gifts. So there's, 3 ways to think about this, perhaps. Immediate giving, deferred giving, and blended. So immediate giving is sort of that, gift now through a donor advised fund or an IRA distribution as a yearly gift. Deferred giving, we can think of that as that planned giving piece, gifts that activate later, given through your estate plan that are distributed. And blended is a mix of these together. So thinking about some now and some later. So leaving or making yearly gifts to an organization, and also having that written in your estate plan to give beyond. And so this can be things through legacy giving, like endowing scholarships or programs, or, just ensuring that these organizations and causes that you are passionate about thrive for future generations as well. So, there can be in your planned giving, gifts that are restricted to specific projects or funds that really matter to you, or gifts that the nonprofit has the choice to use towards its most immediate needs as those monies are gifted. So that is really about the initial legacy giving piece is that long-term thinking ahead, planning for a gift in the future.
Eva, tell us about ways you can make an impact through different giving vehicles.
Absolutely. So I think there's a few different ways that are especially of interest perhaps to people over 65. Some, like I said, are that legacy giving piece tied into your estate plan, and some are things that you can do now. So one giving vehicle that is gaining a lot of popularity and really being utilized across the nonprofit sector and by donors is a donor advised fund. A donor advised fund is particularly of interest to donors in that they receive an immediate tax benefit at the time they transfer their assets to the donor advised fund. So think about getting that income tax deduction or perhaps tax avoidance by this gift. So then those assets are invested into the donor advised fund with the goal of growing that initial gift in the fund. And then over time, that's like a typical investment portfolio. However, this money is specifically earmarked and set to be given to charities in the future. So, then those will be distributed over years to different nonprofits or organizations. So this is also really a positive way to give if you are someone who likes to give anonymously or likes to give with, just without being super tied to that nonprofit. Perhaps you're just looking to make gifts and sort of have that bird's eye view involvement instead of being super tied in. So that's an interesting one to consider. So again, the nonprofits receive that gift from the actual donor advised fund, not from the original donor.
Eva, Eva, tell us about qualified charitable distributions from IRAs.
Absolutely. So again, this one is interesting. So, I would absolutely recommend, if these are ways that you want to give, to speak with a professional, whether that's your accountant or tax professional as well. But qualified charitable distributions from an IRA are a great giving vehicle for those over 70 and a half years old. You can give directly from your IRA to charity, and it counts towards your required minimum distributions from the IRA. So this is really positive and great for people who want to meet the mandatory withdrawals without increasing their tax burden. And again, this is a way to make those gifts and make them work for your financial goals. I think that's the key to some of these giving vehicles is, ensuring that you can deploy your dollars to the best spend without all of it going to taxes, for example, as you're withdrawing this money from your IRA.
Eva, tell us about the human side of charitable gifting.
Absolutely. So I think this is a great opportunity to touch on a couple examples of giving. And one other vehicle of giving that I would just touch on quickly before I talk about these stories, because these stories tie in directly to this final giving piece of giving, which might be the most familiar, which is bequests or estate planning. So, including charities or nonprofits in your will or your trust. So you can name organizations to be beneficiaries of your IRA or your life insurance policy, or just leave a certain amount of money in your will to these organizations. So again, this is one where you'll want to meet with your financial planner or lawyer to discuss the best option there for your family and your goals. But this does tie in perfectly to the human side and sort of these stories that give an example. So recently, one of the largest gifts to Georgia Tech ever made was just gifted in a will. It was $100 million to endow professors in the engineering department. So this is really exciting in that for the school, in that this gift is left to build a long legacy for the school to ensure that they can hire and retain the best professors. It's going to change the future of the school for years and years to come, and really change the landscape of that engineering department there. This person was a really just loved the school, very dedicated to, watching it thrive and grow, and just felt very strong alignment to supporting this specific program. So this is just a great example of leaving a gift through your will, as well as aligning to your values, and, sort of leaving that legacy for the future. So this is one where you can really see that planned thoughtfulness well in advance to empower the organization of their choice.
You would tell us how you come into play in this. And, I'd like to learn more about what you do and how you do it. And let's say do you meet with individuals? Do you meet with the nonprofits, or all of the above? Let's say I'm thinking about leaving a legacy. Start at the beginning and take us through the process.
Sure. So I think as a donor, someone considering this, and my role is a bit different, Henry, because now I'm on the consulting side. So often I'm more so involved with the nonprofits or the organizations who are receiving these gifts. So from the donor side, what I would recommend is, like I said, working with your lawyer or your accountant to focus on your potential gift and thinking about that. Then there are wonderful, wonderful people at so many nonprofits that might be director of advancement, director of development, major gifts officer, thinking about those people who are in roles to really help you increase your impact through this gift. And they are more than happy and excited to work with donors to navigate and discuss, ways that making a gift feels right for you. The timing of that gift, the length of that gift, the size of that gift, what that gift will really have an impact on, whether that's a long-term project, a short-term project, an endowment. So I would recommend, if you have a nonprofit that you love and you don't already have a close connection who's there on the staff, to find that person and get to know them and really start to build a relationship so that you can be in charge of your best and most empowering gift for them.
Now let's flip the script and tell us more about your role. It seems like you advise nonprofits or you help fundraise. I mean, explain what you do in more detail. I'm interested and fascinated, and I think it would be very interesting to our viewers.
Sure, absolutely. So from the nonprofit consulting standpoint, usually, there's many different types of projects. For example, right now I'm working on a campaign. So the organization is running a large campaign. It's a capital campaign. So they are building with these monies. So really my role is to help guide the direction and timing and scope of the campaign to support our client partners in identifying those best next steps, building out communications to the public, thinking about who are we asking for gifts. So this is, can include these legacy gifts, but often includes pledged gifts over a period of 3 to 5 years, perhaps, or a one-time gift that really spurs on the construction of these projects. Similarly, some of the other things I do is early on in a client partnership, helping the nonprofit identify how much money they can raise at a campaign so that when they set out to start fundraising, they know exactly what their goal is and they know they can be successful. It is a very exciting role. I love building relationships with my client partners and getting to know them and their constituents. And not only that, but also just seeing the passion across so many nonprofit sectors that these folks who are working for the nonprofits have for their organization is so empowering. And really that takes me back, Henry, to my previous comment of getting to know those folks at those nonprofits that listeners might particularly feel passionate about. Really get to know these folks because they are there doing the work day in, day out. And, often I find that to be the most inspiring part of my work as well.
Your passion comes through. And, what's interesting is, I'm thinking about the fact that how things have changed. I mean, on Facebook now with birthdays, they often have fundraisers where you try to have fundraising for a nonprofit, or they have, there are more and more nonprofits asking for money. So it's got to be a very competitive field. So how do you sort through that, and how do you make sure that when you're dealing with a nonprofit that it's one where most of your dollars are going to help someone and not go for overhead, so to speak?
Absolutely. And I think there's a couple points there that I'd like to touch on. One, yes, there are so many nonprofits doing all types of work. And on the surface, you might see two food banks that look like they are doing perhaps the same thing. But when you really can dive in and get to know these organizations, you'll often see that there's many, many layers to the services being provided if they're service focused. And so I just, again, encourage people to do research, to get to know them, to attend an event, to volunteer, to really understand these organizations, especially if you're considering a planned gift and you want to feel really great about that gift long term, knowing it's going to something that you're particularly passionate about. I think, to your point about the Facebook fundraisers, those are wonderful ways for organizations to get support very easily from people who care about certain causes. Again, to my point of, thinking about planned giving and connecting with those professionals at organizations, it really adds back in that human element. So if you're someone who's outgoing and loves to know people, to ask questions, to be curious, I really encourage you to go beyond that Facebook fundraiser and think about how you can be more tied in with these organizations. So I think that is one piece. In terms of the dollar spend, I think that it can sometimes be a misconception how much of a single dollar is spent on overhead. Nonprofits often operate on very, very low operating margins compared to funding their causes. So again, that's something where when you feel passionate about a certain organization, I encourage you to, reach out and talk to them, ask them those questions, and find out really too what overhead exactly means, because sometimes it can even be a part of their programming, even though it falls under overhead or what people from the outside might think as not necessarily being programmatic dollar spend.
Eva, are you working with several nonprofits at a time? I'm still trying to understand your role a little bit. I mean, it seems you're working on projects and things like that, but do you work with many nonprofits?
So it depends on the type of project. So right now I'm with one client in a one-to-one management partnership relationship. Depending on other clients and their needs, sometimes they're one or two at the same time, depending on really the scope of their work. And so it often depends on the campaign size, the level of involvement, how big is a certain, right? If an organization already has a large fundraising team, then maybe they don't need, this full-time me to be involved full time. So it really just depends on our client partners and their needs. And it just varies. So in a year, I might have 1 to 4 clients. It depends on the campaign length or the project length. But often it is focused on supporting those major gift efforts, supporting on helping these organizations really bring, transformational change to their own project. I think what would be interesting, I have a second story donor story that really touches on less of that planned giving piece and more of that gift over years to empower the organization. So
Please share it with us, yes.
I was previously working with an independent school. And so part of this is they are launching a campaign to build on new sections of this school, focused on a couple key different things. So families, of course, the main donor base would be families, alumni, perhaps grandparents, and perhaps community members. So this is a story about grandparents their kids are in elementary school, but they know, or their grandchildren are in elementary school, but they know that their children will get up into the middle school and the high school, which is where the construction is taking place for new and really exciting programs that, are focused on STEM and engineering. So they made a gift, impactful gift to be paid over 3 years. This is a six-figure gift to be paid over 3 years. And, this is a way for them, even though their kids are not using that space now and other kids are benefiting from that space between now and then, they know their children and that, their family will be a part of that in the future. And it's a really, impactful story of leaving a legacy now versus in a planned gift in your will. So there's many ways to do this. And working with the organization, you can determine the best way to make that perhaps a pledge payment or a gift over years to increase the impact you can have. For example, we know often larger gifts can be made when people make those gifts over years, because you have more of an opportunity to space that out, make it align to your yearly financial goals and things like that. So that's one where you can kind of see the difference between the planned gift that was left to Georgia Tech. And there's some wonderful stories about that gift online if anyone's interested in reading more about that. And versus this gift at the independent school, which will make a more immediate impact in the next few years for their family, while they still get to see and enjoy on behalf of their grandkids that transformation there.
Eva, is there a site that people should go to that you can recommend or to learn more about you?
So my company's website is called CCS Fundraising. Well, my organization is called CCS Fundraising. So anyone can go and look that up. There are many, many resources for nonprofits, but also, considerations for donors as well. So that's a great resource. I would also encourage, if you're thinking about perhaps those planned gifts or donor advice fund, to look that up. There are so many wonderful resources. For example, on Fidelity, there's a wonderful article and resource about legacy giving and donor advice funds. So I would encourage anyone to just do a little extra research on this. I'm also always happy to, field any questions that I can answer. And if I can't, perhaps provide a better resource or direct folks to the right place.
We're out of time. Eva Kirkman, I want to thank you so much for being our guest on Gracefully Growing. This was such an important topic that you really covered very beautifully. Of course, I want to thank Bloomfield Cable, our sponsors, and all of you for making Gracefully Growing possible. Thank you so much.